No, not yet. Hold on. The run will start in just a moment. So yeah, this will be any percent for Specter of Torment.
Alright, so let me know when the run starts.
The run has started, and I'll go ahead and explain just some of the basic mechanics. So this is Specter Knight. This being a Shovel Knight game, a lot of the mechanics familiar to people who've played Shovel Knight are still here intact. But Shovel Knight is a lot. He has a higher jump. He does not have the ability to walk up walls like Specter does. So Specter has a lot of maneuvering advantages over Shovel Knight. And in this campaign, you will be going through stages very similar to Shovel Knight stages, but they have all been reworked, new art assets, remixed music. It's actually really cool, lots of fun. A lot of people have told me that they enjoyed the game casually, more than the other two campaigns. Specter Knight has the ability to perform a dash attack, where he attempts to cut at an enemy that is either in the air or on the ground. A little reticle will appear on that target, indicating that that's the one he's going to be attacking and what direction his attack will be going in. If an enemy has more than one health to it, you will usually bounce off of it. These green dragons work slightly differently. You are allowed to pass through them as you strike at them. Now I'm going out of my way to collect these red skulls because that is the currency used to purchase sub-weapons for Specter Knight. So I'm trying to waste as little time possible getting them, because the weapons are very useful, but you don't need that many of them. This is a small trick that gets you up to reach this skull really quickly. A really cool trick that was discovered by Mr. Gentle. And jumping up the ladder there is a silly little shenanigan I came up with, because Specter can jump faster than he climbs. His climbing speed is about the same as his climbing the ladder.
Nah, this run is fine.
So we're already at the first boss here.
You look like you're intentionally letting yourself get hit by certain enemies. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, that is damage boosting, and it is sometimes faster to take damage intentionally in order to bypass obstacles. And this being a speedrun, that is definitely the goal, is the fastest solution. Being at lower health is riskier in a lot of situations, but with enough practice, it's something that is not a threat to your run. So that was Black Knight, and there is a pretty viable stun lock on him. Prevents him
this run is fine.
from doing just about anything. But the positioning on him is pretty precise throughout that. Be going down here to pick up some money and another red skull. And Specter Knight, unlike Shovel Knight and Plague Knight, instead of having an overworld map, he has this tower hub where he can pick which stage he goes to next, which is really nice in the routing. So we're at Flying Machine. This is normally a stage that's done very late for Shovel Knight and Plague Knight. Defeating the boss from Flying Machine will give us 3,000 gold, and will unlock a weapon that we very much are looking forward to having. One of the dangerous aspects about this stage is that you can get money from breaking a checkpoint, and we absolutely will be breaking every checkpoint in this stage. There's too much money to pass up here. I'll be needing 10 skulls by the time I finish this stage. I'm going to pick up a little extra money just to be safe. And I will also be needing a little more than 7k gold. I'm gonna go ahead and leave that checkpoint intact since I got some extra money before. Now this stage has a global cycle. From the start of the stage, there are fans that are blowing, and I did have some trip-ups at the beginning, so I will probably miss the first fan cycle. But it's not a big deal.
What is a global cycle?
So some of the elements in a stage are based on... They are a recurring pattern from the moment you enter a level as opposed to the moment you enter the room. So these cannonballs that are firing, that's a local cycle. And they will always be like that when you enter the room. But there's a fan that's coming up that has been blowing since the moment I selected the stage. And if I reach the fan within a certain amount of time, it actually will be blowing as I get to it, which I need to get across a certain gap. Oof. So just like that, yeah, I was not on the right cycle there. Spikes in this game are still a one-hit kill. I have to be very careful to avoid them. This is a very difficult room. These enemies will push and pull you away, and they will often spell doom for a lot of runners. Okay, I did manage to get through that, no problems. What? So this is another room with global cycle. These fans here will also be blowing from the beginning of the stage. Collecting a bit more money here.
Nah, this run is fine.
And here is Propeller Knight. Now this is also a very dangerous boss battle because of how much damage he can deal. Ow. Okay. So if those of you, if you are familiar with the way the bosses work in Shovel Knight, all the bosses for Specter's campaign have been reworked. They have some type of twist, some type of different way that they will end up fighting you.
Nah, this run is fine.
So now that I have 12 skulls and over 9k gold, I'm going to be purchasing Judgment Rush, which is the first sub-weapon that we'll be getting in this run. Very useful weapon for the speedrun. It allows you to lock onto an enemy's position, and you'll deal 2 damage, usually one-shots most enemies. This is Manny. This is where I'm going to buy my armor upgrade. The armor upgrade is actually the ability to grind anywhere at all. This is really fast and very useful in the run.
Are there any other viable options
run
to
is
the
fine.
armor selection?
Yes, towards the end of the run, we will be buying a different armor for the last boss. So now we're in the Lich Yard. Usually an early stage for Shovel and Plague, so this is not too different for him.
It's useful, come on. No.
As you can see, Judgment Rush is allowing us to bypass a number of the room's puzzles, and the rail mail is a very fast method of movement. Now the way Judgment Rush's AI works is that it will try to pick the enemy that is closest to Specter Knight when you lock onto it, but there are ways to fool it into attacking the enemies that are more useful to be targeted, kind of get you across the room very quickly. A couple more skulls here. We will be picking up one more sub-weapon before we finish this game, but we unfortunately will not be getting it after this stage. It costs 9 skulls to unlock the Skeletal Sentry.
Are there any other viable sub-weapons?
Yeah, the Bounding Soul is actually being considered right now. But it is currently being tested. This is the most secure route for the time being.
Nah, this run is fine.
So, Specter Knight is usually the boss that you encounter in the Lich Yard, but since you're playing as him, the boss that you're fighting is actually the Phantom Striker. very dangerous boss, but he is much more predictable now. Level order. So, the reason why we are doing the levels in this order is not just because of the money that you get from beating the bosses, but because the sub-weapon that you are allowed to purchase from Red is based on which level you've completed.
Nah, this run is
The
fine.
Flying Machine unlocks Judgment Rush, and the Lich Yard unlocks the Skeletal Sentry, but we don't have enough red skulls to buy it just yet. So this is the Memory of Adventure. This is the first quote-unquote dream sequence. Much like Shovel has his dreams where he tries to catch Shield Knight, we have full-fledged levels as Specter Knight. The character we're controlling is Donovan, which is Specter Knight when he was alive. Spoilers. He controls exactly like Specter Knight does. Lots of money in the dream sequence here. So now that I've gotten a fair bit more money, I'm actually going to be purchasing Darkness. My ability to use Judgment Rush is limited to a resource called Darkness, and by purchasing these wisps, I can increase the amount of mana I have, more or less.
Nah, this run is fine.
Having 3 Darkness is particularly useful in the Clockwork Tower, which is also usually a late game stage for Shovel and Plague. But as it's such a long stage, considering that it has 2 auto-scrollers in it, it's nice to get out of the way earlier. We'll be picking up the last 2 skulls we need in this stage because they're both in auto-scrollers, which means they don't cost any actual time to purchase, or go out of your way to pick up. As you can see, Judgment Rush is again providing a wealth of skips in this stage. I'm gonna grab this checkpoint for safety. That damage boost is a little tricky, but it does actually save a fair bit of time from having to wait on those gears. Although these auto-scrollers are not incredibly difficult, I have to be careful not to get myself killed while trying to maneuver through them. Killing enemies in specific ways to try and get the gold that drops from them. Swag! There's a lot of money in the auto-scroller sections as well. This is a chompy enemy. They will home onto your position and then try to attack you once they get nearby. Now the checkpoint real quick. So, not all of the ceilings in this game were created equally. Ow. And that one is actually missing, more or less. Which allows you to get through that section pretty quickly. It's important to not take damage on this stage because Tinker Knight, if you remember from Shovel Knight's campaign, and Plague Knight as well, Shovel Knight and Plague Knight using their abilities were capable of knocking Tinker out in first go, very quickly and easily. Tinker Knight has no such weakness for Specter Knight's campaign. So you actually have to contend with him, which was already normally very difficult for Shovel Knight, but you'll see that his fight has been entirely reworked in Phase 1 and 2. As far as these skulls in the auto-scroller go, they don't cost any time to pick up, but other skulls have been constantly worked and rerouted to see which one is the fastest to get. We would normally break this checkpoint, but again, I'm going to be a little safer here.
Nah, this run is fine.
Bodily contact with Tinker actually does a full heart of damage every single time. That's another reason why he's so dangerous. And here is the second phase, which now goes horizontally instead of having to drop downwards. So now that we have 9 skulls and just over 7,000 gold, we can buy the Skeletal Sentry, and the money will actually be used to upgrade the Skeletal Sentry. Unlike Shovel Knight and Plague Knight, Specter Knight can actually make his weapons even better. Oops. They start out with a base form. That's how I've been using Judgment Rush. But the Skeletal Sentry is actually way better if you can spend the money to upgrade it. Skeletal Sentry, you can throw it and make it explode, and it will also fire shots for you. The upgrade is with Legion, and that is actually upstairs. Oops. So unlocking Mania and Legion costs quite a bit of money, and then purchasing the upgrade itself is the reason why we have to get so much gold at the start of the game. And now we'll be going to the Iron Whale.
Nah, this run is fine.
But before we do, this is the Wandering Adventurer, Wandering Traveler, Breeze, who will be picking a fight with us now. He's a very tricky enemy. Unfortunately, he did get the better of me and cost me quite a bit of time.
How useful is the sentry in following bosses?
Well, with how Reese moves around so much, getting a consistent set of shots on him is difficult, but on the rest of the bosses, who have much more predictable patterns, the Skeletal Sentry does a massive amount of damage.
Nah, this run is fine.
So now we're at the Iron Whale. This is actually one of my favorite stages. The music has been done so well in this stage. I love it.
So why do we go to Iron Whale of all places?
So Iron Whale is easy enough to do on 3 Darkness, and it's actually, map movement wise, not much further than going through King Knight's and Pole Knight's stage. It actually is further away, but you want more Darkness for King Knight and Polar Knight. The amount of tricks that exist in those stages requires a lot of mana.
Do you need to be collecting any more red skulls?
I do not need to collect more red skulls, but I do need to get more money, and since I don't want to go out of my way to get money, I will be getting the money mostly through killing bosses.
So if Judgment Rush hits the nearest enemy, how'd you manage to get it to hit a fish across the room?
That is one of the ways that we have found to trick Judgment Rush into targeting the enemies that we want. Judgment Rush targets enemies that are closer to Specter Knight, but it will not put Specter Knight somewhere where he cannot exist, so it will not put him anywhere in a wall or if there's no room afterwards. That is how we can trick Judgment Rush into targeting an enemy in a better position. So this is the 420 fish, because he always gets really high. And I'm going to be trying to get him done in 1 cycle before he passes through the screen. That's very difficult to do, but there is a neat little setup to do it. And I got it. Very nice. That's very tricky, but I was very happy to find that. the layouts of the rooms are so similar to the ones that Shovel and Plague had to deal with that the occasional nod to their campaigns is providing a fun twist on what Specter has to deal with. Uh-oh. So this is Bertha. Bertha deals 2 full hearts of damage on contact. She is incredibly dangerous. And that's not the last we'll see of her either. Your ability to maneuver with rail mail while grinding is difficult in the air, so having control of rail mail is very important. Now, Treasure Knight is supposed to have an entirely different fight, but because of the Skeletal Sentry's added bullets, he actually apparently has been programmed with the same AI he had in Shovel Knight's and Plague Knight's campaign, so we don't even get to see anything of the new elements of the fight. That's how useful it is. Now, I'm actually shy a little bit of the money to pick up some Darkness before doing Mole Knight stage, so I'm just gonna come right here. It's just enough money. Not what I would usually do, but I'd like to keep the route the same for now. Now these wisps that are providing me with more health and more darkness, they are actually within the stages, and I wouldn't have to pay for them normally, but it's faster to use money to buy them instead of going through the rooms that they are in.
Nah, this run is fine.
So these are slime blocks. This is one of the unique elements to the Lost City. We will actually be seeing it later, but this is the first time it should be introduced in the campaign. They bounce Specter around quite a lot. But Rail Mail does negate a lot of the pushback from hitting these slime blocks.
How'd you not fall in those lava pits?
How did I what?
Not fall in those lava pits.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
How'd you not fall in those lava pits back there?
Oh, how did I not fall on them? Right, so there is, using Specter's ability to target enemies and dash through them, we set up the birder so that we can use him to get past the lava section with the people. You definitely don't want to be waiting in the speedrun, so the fact that there are setups to skip these sections is very much appreciated. And this is a neat little trick that Speedfrog actually found. Judgment Rush, when there are no enemies around, will actually cause Specter to pause in midair, and you can actually use that to climb walls and surfaces that you would normally not have anything nearby to allow you to continue climbing upwards. Oh my god. There we go. Quick fix. Ah! Okay, I'm fine. Coming up on the boss now. I'll be doing something called double taps, which is a very difficult technique. It does improve this fight a little bit, but it's much more important for Specter when you're doing low percent runs because he doesn't have weapons or the ability to do steady DPS on airborne enemies. And I'll go into more about that toward the end of the run. But for now, we are going to do the second memory, the memory of conflict. So Luon helps me out in the first memory, and I'm going to be relying on him to carry me on throughout the rest of the stage. Go, Luon, go! Oh, okay. So sometimes Luon can actually run really far ahead and be in the proper position before I even get there. His AI is a little wonky sometimes. But now I have Caltrops. Luon actually gave me Caltrops at the start of the stage. Caltrops were actually around in the first stage, but you have to go out of your way to pick them up. And Luon will automatically give them to you in the second memory. Which is useful, because they do provide some extra damage for Commentated, especially on the upcoming boss.
Nah, this run is fine.
The way I'm fighting Shield Knight is actually brought to you by Patois, who found a really nice, strong setup to fight this boss. Shield Knight's tackles do a full heart of damage, so I'm trying to be a little more careful here. There we go. Not the greatest fight, but she is a very difficult boss to deal with because you cannot attack her from the front. You have to wait until she drops her shield or exposes her backside.
Nah, this run is fine.
The next stage is the Explodatorium. A stage known by Shovel and Plague Runners to be absolutely dreadful and awful. It's not much different for Specter, unfortunately. There are water currents in this version of the stage, and they push you back quite a lot. So being airborne or skipping them entirely is the most effective way of getting past these screens. Now, these pots are on a global cycle, just like the ones in... Oh! Oof! Just like the ones in Flying Machine with the fans. So keeping up pace like I did just now was actually really useful. These rats are such annoying enemies. Ow. By using Rail Mail, we can fight the current to a fair bit, and actually manage to defeat the Alchemeister mini-boss before he transforms. Oof, this stage is incredibly dangerous, but it sounds like I'm going to beat the music loop, which means I did really well, actually.
Perfect.
Excellent.
I
It's
saved
actually one of my fastest
every
times ever.
single frame.
Plague Knight, who used to be such a horrible nightmare for runners to fight, has been made an absolute joke by Specter's normal DPS coupled with the Skeletal Sentry.
Nah, this run is fine.
So since I did get quite a bit of gold from defeating him, I'm actually going to purchase the Last Darkness upgrade. Which is great, because the following two stages do require quite a bit of darkness. But first, guest appearance from one of the other Wandering Travelers, Baz. Oops.
Nah, this run is fine.
Polar Night stage is easily the heaviest magic use stage, so missing tricks that require magic is very costly. I'll be taking advantage of the Skeletal Sentry's detonation ability. Whoa. That's actually fine, because these slimes are actually also on a global cycle, and they can be in the way if you are too quick. It is possible to one-cycle that bird, but doing so usually removes much of the rainbow platform that I use to skip having to climb the ladder in the following room. So the Skeletal Sentry's detonation ability is also capable of hitting switches, but it can sometimes trigger switches multiple times, which is very annoying. Hopefully I can get this trick. Ah, darn. Too early. It is possible to hit that switch and go in one fluid motion through this room, which is very nice. A good time save if you can get it. I have to be careful when slashing at these switches on the rails. There's a strange property of slashing when you're touching a rail that triggers 2 hits in a row. So I would end up hitting the switch twice for almost no reason. Oops. Oh, Jesus! Okay, that almost got me killed. Let's see if I can get past this guy without getting hit. Nope. Okay. It's a very tight setup based on how you enter the room. Not a big deal. The Skeletal Sentry makes bosses quite a joke, so going in with very little health on Polar Night is actually not threatening. But this is the first stage where you would normally see grinding action.
Nah, this run is fine.
So it's nice that we get to just keep it throughout the run with that armor. If any of you remember the Polar Night battle, this hardly lasted the length that it would have taken Shovel or Plague. This is another memory sequence, but it's actually not a playable stage like the other ones were. It's just a bit of the story. On to the last night left. This is King Knight. And King Knight actually has a very interesting remix of his music choice. Very awesome. His former song, In the Halls of the Usurper, is now in a major instead of the minor key that it was before. Very happy melody. So I actually walked to that brick, and although the mage I just did the Judgment Rush on and was the closest enemy, by walking to that brick I make it so that Judgment Rush will actually swing me the other way around, which is important in making certain cycles and rooms. Oh no. I actually did not want to hit that book, but that's... oh, fine. I'm fine. More of that ladder hopping. I was hoping that would be health, but that's okay too. Can always pick up more health later if I really need it. Oops. That is one of my favorite tricks to do with Judgment Rush. It just skips the entirety of that room and how much of an annoying mess it can be.
Nah, this run is fine.
Once again, we're gonna get to appreciate how great the Skeletal Sentry is. Now, although these boss kills are quick, there is a lot of specific positioning that has to be done, and maneuvering the bosses for the Skeletal Sentry shots to hit them all.
Nah, this run is fine.
But still, the fights are certainly a lot easier with that weapon. So now, with all of the knights defeated, I'll actually be going to the last couple stages, the end game for Specter. Shovel Knight and Plague Knight had 3 tower stages. This is the first one for Specter. But Specter only has 2 by comparison. Making great use of the amount of darkness we now have. I kind of didn't want to fall down right there because I would rather not get hit by that. Oof, that was close. This Crusher section is familiar to both Shovel and Plague. A little different for Specter. Oof, that was close. One of the more annoying enemies from the Lich Shard makes a return. These Gravediggers have a lot of health, and they also deal full heart damage, so it's very hard to get past them without taking hits. A lot of the elements from all of the stages have been put together to make the tower. The Tower 1 is notorious for being incredibly difficult by comparison to the other Knight stages. But considering that you have the option to choose all the other ones in any order that you like, they had to make the difficulty ramp up considerably. Yacht Club Games, the people who made this fine game. Now, having 2 health is not ideal. The boss for the first tower is, just like Shovel and Plague, it is Black Knight, and he is much more difficult to fight the second time around than Shovel Knight, or Plague Knight ever has to deal with, really. So I will be taking some extra health. When we first fought Black Knight, there was a consistent stun lock for him, but as you'll see, that just won't work because of the way you have to fight him. Up in the air, it's a lot more difficult to get that same stun lock on him. Oof. It's done. Certainly one of the most difficult encounters for Specter Knight's campaign. And with that, I will actually be now purchasing that other armor that was mentioned at the beginning of the run. This is the Striker's Shawl, so I will no longer be able to grind wherever I like. I, however, now have access to a Charge Slash, which does deal a full heart of damage, and will be very useful for the last stage here. Not having a second tower stage like Shovel Knight and Plague Knight does, you just go straight to the last one. There is no boss rush for Specter, so the difficulty of the last 3 encounters makes up for it. And without a proper setup, this tile block room has ended a lot of runners' attempts. getting up here is much easier once you learn how to maneuver. There's actually a way to skip this room that was found by Speedfrog. Hand Touch 2.0. There was a small trick named Hand Touch in Plague Knight's campaign, requiring Plague Knight's hand to touch one of the background elements of the stage. And similarly, using a visual cue with Specter's hand, there's a way to jump through the previous room and then barely find the way up onto this elevator platform. This fight is very dangerous compared to Shovel Knights and Plague Knights because the Enchantress deals a full lot of damage through most of her attacks, and I only have 4 health. But luckily, she is a lot easier to deal with once you understand how to fight her.
Nah, this run is fine.
Not a bad fight at all. And here comes the last boss, who happens to be on rails, which is really cool. This fight is actually extremely fun, casually, but how random the rails directions up and downwards tends to cause a lot of grief for runners. Not to mention all of Reese's attacks will do a full heart of damage as well. I have to be careful not to fall, which can be very difficult considering the way Breeze maneuvers sometimes. Luckily, there is sort of a way to keep yourself alive using Judgment Rush to hang in the air like that.
Thanks for doing the thing.
And that was the last hit there. Oof. Not nearly as difficult as the encounter with Enchantress, but Reese is a fitting end to this campaign. Not being over a minute from my own PB right now is alright. My sum of best is much better than my PB at the moment, so I would like to improve my improve the time for this category at some point in the near future. But yeah, that was Specter of Torment. Lots of fun. Thank you for watching.